this week has been a little long, but the good thing is that I feel like I've pressed through and I feel like I've done enough to be able to feel like that I feel accomplished and I feel like I'm actually making progress, even if it's slow progress, because ultimately I'm doing a lot of things myself when it comes to like relaunching a new podcast and among other things, just in my personal life. But I wanted to kind of talk about the sense of community when it comes down to actually keeping yourself and others accountable and just like trying to build as a community this place where we're able to just talk about our journey in our own projects, our journey in our own productivity and motivation, and just like where that comes from, and ultimately how we can actually come together and encourage each other.
And who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Welcome back to the Winter Arc Podcast. Today is September the 21st, and this is journal entry number 17. And I wanted to actually take this episode mostly and talk about how I really want to have a Discord server or some type of community forum where anyone that listens to the podcast and anyone that wants to like go on this journey of just finding and making new habits and breaking bad habits and just building new goals for ourselves during this winter arc, that we can come together and just talk and just like literally just like be in fellowship with each other and build each other up to be able to encourage each other to accomplish each other's goals and to uplift people when it comes down to their personal goals or building a new habit and or breaking a bad habit. But I think that this is important because the biggest thing that I've taken away from life is the fact that we cannot actually become the people who we're supposed to be unless we're surrounded by people who are like-minded. And I think that that's actually going to be a beneficial thing for this podcast and this podcast community, even if it's like really, really small, because I think that we have the chance of actually building each other up. And I think that we have the chance of actually building something good together. So I'm going to update that later on in tomorrow's episode, and I'm actually going to invite you guys to a Discord server or a different community forum where we can just simply like hang out and just lift each other up and encourage each other. Because I think that's like actually half the journey. If you aren't surrounding yourself around people who believe in you and uplift you and want to see you succeed, and not just in like a superficial way where they're trying to get something out of you, but just like genuinely want to see you succeed as a person, then I think that that is going to actually boost your own productivity and motivation exponentially, because you're going to feel like the people support you, that people love you, and that people actually want to see the best for you. So I think that's the main reason I really want to make this community a reality, even if it's just us checking in like every week or something like that, and just talking to each other and just talking to each other of like what we've been working on, what we've been doing, and just like in general how we can build each other up. So if you're interested in that, just stay tuned, because I am really excited to actually introduce that to this podcast and to the audience of this podcast. But this week in general has been long, and I feel like I've taken many days, not just Monday through Wednesday or Monday through Friday, as I said before in the other podcast entries this week, that, I just like took a lot of time for myself to try to like reprocess and re-energize myself to be able to start the process of launching a new podcast. And I was able to do some test footage and do some tests in order to just see like where I want to take this new podcast, not just, the winter arc, because I obviously want to keep doing the winter arc every single day, but also of the fact I just want to be able to create value where, there's a lot of value lacking, and just like making something that be identified as content that is not only entertaining, but also just asks questions that are real and asks questions that matter ultimately. So that's where I'm coming from with that side project. But in other projects and stuff like that, just like really trying to stay on top of the fact that, I'm not trying to burn out. I'm not trying to per se like do all these things just to be a good person, just to be a great person. I'm trying to grow into the person that I think, God is calling me to be, but also trying to grow into the person I believe that I can be, and the person that I believe that like, and honestly, I don't know who that person is fully for myself yet, because like only God does. And I'm going to fully trust him in the fact that he's going to direct my steps and make me into the person he wants me to be. And that's why I've just really been focusing on just trying to surrender my will to his will and trying to do everything that I do, even if it's just personal projects like this new podcast I'm launching and just like the Winter Arc podcast that I'm on now, and just try to just choose a direction. I think that's like part of the whole thing. Like we just need to simply choose a direction and start going a direction and see where God leads us. Because, I mean, as the Bible says, God directs man's steps. So he can't direct our steps unless we step forward and actually start. So I think that that's like the main message that I have right now, because like, you know, I think it's just the fact of like, you can't begin transition and you can't begin something without starting something. And I think that's something that I even thought about today when my wife and I were clearing the spare bedroom out to prepare the nursery for our incoming daughter who's due in February, because we can't have a nursery unless we're willing to actually change things. And so right now, like the apartment feels a little messy, and that's not because we gave up, but that's because we're in a state of transition of trying to find places for extra things that we've owned for a while that we don't use, and then just trying to throw away extra things that have no use to us and stuff like that. And so like I think that comes down to, even in your personal life, when you are in a stage of transition, you have to be willing to take the step forward, even though you don't know where you're stepping, because there's so much fog around you. There's so much fog around even myself when I take that step and when I try to do the everyday. And so I would just encourage you to continue that step. But as I said, I'm going to have that community forum up tomorrow, hopefully, and I will intro that and be able to share that link wherever this podcast is distributed, and especially on X if anyone wants to join from there. By the way, if you want to DM me about anything, you can just DM me at Grant__Ace on Instagram for anything, or you can DM me on X, which is just the _winter_arc. So if you want to get in contact me, just contact me, whether it be on Instagram or X. But if not, just stay tuned for that link for the community forum, because I think it'd be great to actually like maybe talk to people who listen to the podcast regularly, if anyone does, and just like connect on a level where we can just encourage each other and lift each other up in everything that we do, whether it be personal projects, just personal needs, and just like becoming the person who I think that God calls us to be, which is just people surrendered to as well. But hope you guys enjoyed this episode and got something from it, even if it's just a general like update of life and just a general update of like what I plan to do with the community here. Also, I want to also begin reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations again, because I read it before, but I really want to go back and look at each chapter and maybe make an episode about what I find in there and how it relates to just our everyday lives and how we're supposed to operate as people of duty and people who use Stoic elements in our everyday life when it comes to actually following through on our promises and when it comes to actually following through in the everyday of our yeses and nos. But thank you so much for listening, and I will see you, or you will rather hear me, tomorrow.